Alright, man, this is episode number 73 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema. This is being recorded on Sunday, August 20th, 2023 at 3:34 p.m. on a beautiful sunny day out. You can hear the lawnmowers outside, the cats are lounging in the sun, it's a nice warm breeze in the air, not too hot, not too cool, perfect t-shirt weather, perfect driving weather to drive with the windows rolled down, you listen to your favorite songs, you're listening to maybe a podcast or an audiobook, or maybe you want to just drive in silence and enjoy the atmosphere around, or listen to the radio, expose yourself to new sounds that you wouldn't normally be familiar with, much in the same way that you watch a film like American Graffiti or Dazed and Confused, of these characters driving around with the various songs of the night, songs that maybe perhaps one wouldn't specifically tune into, but, they put on the radio and it is out of their control, and the soundtrack of the radio puts forth their adventure ahead. Every day there are many things to do. There is much to get done, and we must all organize ourselves in a way that helps us get the job done, man. I tell you, I had some writing that I needed to get done by a deadline, so you better believe I was focused on that. We got it done, got it thoroughly edited and submitted right before the deadline, and I was able to go to the cinema and get that off my back and worry about the next writing that must be accomplished. And when I say worry, I don't mean like I'm sitting there like scared or something. I mean, alright, that's out of the way, now I can go on to the next bit, and so on and so forth. And speaking of the cinema, I'll briefly talk about the new Sachs film that is out in limited cinemas now, distributed by Mubi, who always pick up very interesting titles. I think they distribute certain titles specifically in the UK, and then some in the US. I'm thinking back to thinking like Close, which came out in the US earlier this year, which was a French film that I believe A24 distributed here, but Mubi have a Blu-ray overseas. And if that does get a Blu-ray from A24, it won't be for a little while. And it'll probably be one of their special editions, much in the same way as another title like After Sun, which I believe also was distributed by A24 in the United States, and that has a Mubi Blu-ray from the UK, which is the edition that I have. But the film that they distributed here in America, and I imagine will probably get come to their streaming service sooner than later, perhaps the next month or two, should you keep an eye on it, is the new Ira Sachs film, Passages. This has been getting a lot of talk. This is a new drama starring Franz Rogowski, Adele, let me pull up her name. I always forget what her last name is. Exarchopoulos and Ben Whishaw. I remember hearing about this about a year or so ago, because Ben Whishaw is an actor I'm not as familiar with, but Franz Rogowski and Adele Exarchopoulos are two of I find two of the most interesting actors working right now. I think their choices of films and even the way that they act in these films, it's something that both of them have a charisma that is uniquely their own, and they mesh together very well here. This is, I've said before, I think 2023 is such a terrific year for just so many good films. Now, I can't speak to the contemporary kind of nauseating Hollywood films, the loud, bombastic ones. But I have seen a few solid Hollywood films this year. I've mentioned before my enjoyment of the new Indiana Jones film. I really enjoyed the new Mission Impossible film, and of course Oppenheimer, which I think is one of the best films of the year so far. It's just a complete and total masterclass of filmmaking. But there's been so many great films this year, like I've mentioned before, showing up. Blackberry, One Fine Morning, The Innocent, A Fire, and Passages of Past Lives is also a really terrific film. And Passages is one of my favorite films I've seen this year. This is a film that is, I just really love these kinds of character dramas, like even earlier, other films this year, films like One Fine Morning or Past Lives, just these really great moral ambiguity dramas for adults. There is no spectacle there. It does not dumb itself down. These are adults with adult issues and deal with it in their own ways that makes for far more interesting cinema than any kind of nauseating, explosive, just loud, cinema. And those are fine in their own right. I'm obviously not comparing two completely different kinds of films. That would be ridiculous and pointless. It's like comparing an avant-garde film to a giant studio film. You just can't do that. If you do that, then you're gonna be at some bizarre conclusions. But this is a solid film. You have two leads here. Well, I guess the primary lead would be Franz Rogowski's character. Plays this character. What the hell's his name? He plays character Thomas, who's in a relationship with Ben Winshaw, who we've seen earlier this year. Had a small part in Sarah Polley's new film Women Talking. He had a small but very memorable and important role, but he's also been in plenty of other films, The Lobster, Cloud Atlas. He was in which I didn't even realize, he was in the recent James Bond films, playing the character Q, and I have not seen the last two James Bond films, but I do remember him from Skyfall back in 2012. But he's been in many films. But right at the start of the film, we see that these two characters are already in a troublesome relationship as is, and that's where a lot of the film kind of gets a lot of its strong character ratings from, is that you have a push and pull of this relationship between these two, and it gets complicated when Thomas starts to fall in love with Adele Exarchopoulos' character Agathe, and one night they're at a club dancing, and they go back to her house, engage physically with one another. Thomas is very upfront. He wants to have a very kind of open relationship, something that Martin is not very on board with, and the problems that come with their relationship, the push and pull of primarily Thomas and Martin's relationship. There are some moments when Martin wants to be with Thomas, and Thomas really kind of resists him in a way that they don't have to do a lot of dialogue for. It's just in the way the characters act. There's one sequence that really kind of says it all, where they're lying in bed together. I forgot, I think they were away somewhere at a cabin or something like that. Martin gets in the bed nude to engage physically with Thomas, but Thomas really makes no comments. He doesn't even look at him. He's reading his book. There's moments of silence. The two say nothing, and then Martin just turns off his light and goes to bed, says goodnight, and goes to bed, and that's all you need. And there's other moments when Martin really wants nothing to do with Thomas. He's really kind of sick of him and his inconsistencies, and Thomas is very forthright. He's very persistent, wants to be with him, shows up unannounced to Martin's frustration. And I also want to say another actor who has a small part in the film, a small but very important part, because there are no small parts in films. Every film is a cog in the machine, and you get one out of place, then the whole thing falls apart. It's actor Irwin Kapoa Fally, who plays this character Amad. Him and Martin start to strike up a bit of a friendship, possibly into something more romantic, and the troubles that come with Thomas from that. It's just a solid character study about a character who is self-destructive in his relationships and isn't really aware of his frustrations to these people. As an audience member, we see and identify with him to a certain extent, because you can understand why he would be someone who would be able to get romantic with a lot of people. The opening scene of the film, we see him working on a film as a director, and he is talking to the extras how he wants things a certain way and his frustration, but we can just see that he is very good with people and getting what he wants, but that at the cost of other people. And Adele Exarchopoulos in the film is very good as well. She has been an actor who the more work that I've seen her in, I think she is just really shown to be a very versatile and unique actor. She's been in plenty of films in the past couple of years. She kind of hit the scene with what year was it? 2013's Blue is the Warmest Color, which got a lot of talk at Cannes, which is a good film. I know that wasn't her first film, but that was the first one that a lot of people, including myself, became aware of her presence. And she's been in other interesting films since. Zero Fucks Given from 2021. The Five Devils, which is another movie film, which is an interesting film. I think that will need to be rewatched in the future, but very interesting. I actually just watched her recently in the new Quentin Dupieux film, Smoking Causes Coughing. She has a small role in that. She's a very good actor. Like I said earlier, she has a charisma that is so uniquely her own, much in the same way that Franz Rogowski does. This was the first film of both of theirs that I've seen where they both are speaking English. Franz Rogowski is an actor who I am not as familiar with compared to Adele, but I've seen him in a couple of films, and he has always just given a really, really memorable performance. He's been in films like the one that I like to champion, the film from 2018, In the Isles, where he has very little dialogue in that film, but he has a very memorable performance. And that's a film that the more I've thought about, the more I enjoy so much. And it also has that actor, Sandra Hüller, who was in I'm Your Man, which ended up making my favorite films of 2021 list. And actually, she's going to be in the new film that just won the Palme d'Or, Anatomy of a Fall. So that'll definitely be watched. And actually, connection right back to Adele, she was in the 2019 film Sybil with her, which I have not seen yet, but is on my watch list. But Franz Rogowski, I think he was also in the film Transit by Christian Petzold, Hidden Life by Terrence Malick, Victoria from 2015, which is a terrific film. It's a very ambitious film. It's a one-take thriller, and it's very, very good. Would definitely recommend that if you have not come across that at some point. It's over 2 hours, but it moves at a lightning fast pace, and especially if you're somebody... Actually, it's 2.5 hours, my bad. But if you're somebody who's very interested in camera placement and keeping it in the shot, then I think that'd be a great film to study. Disregard the pauses here. I'm just having my coffee as well. I like to keep myself caffeinated to talk about these films. But the way that Franz, I think the way that he says certain words, whether intentional or not, I don't know if that's a credit to him or perhaps Ira Sachs' direction. It's the way that he inflects certain words, has a very interesting dialect. He has a very charismatic way of talking, the way he has this sort of lisp, but it's very, very compelling. Like there's one piece of dialogue early on that's in the trailer, and I really just love the way he says it, because it says he's almost got a childlike kind of way he goes about it. You know, he's at the bar, and he's with Ben Winshaw, who doesn't want to dance with him. Adele, Agathe is right next to him, and Thomas turns to her, and he says something like, it's my party, and my husband doesn't want to dance with me. It's the way he says it, the way he is like a higher pitched kind of tone. I really love that about him. Certain dialogue that he says in the film. He's just such a interesting performer, and I think a big part of why the film works is how the three of them are able to play off each other so well and are able to balance these really dramatic sequences without it being melodramatic, and never, divulges into that. You see so many films about characters like this that just become shouting matches, and it becomes so there's not that you shouldn't have that in a film, but I've just seen plenty of films that the drama comes from the characters just yelling at each other, and there feels like a disconnect. That's why I can think of like many great examples of just you have like that great exchange in the third act of Before Midnight, where you have Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. There's just one of the strongest sequences in Richard Linklater's impressive filmography. There's just great dialogue back and forth that feels like a play. Or even jumping to another Adele ex Arcopoulos film, Blue is the Warmest Color, where you have one of my favorite sequences in that film. Actually, there's two sequences in particular where I think the dialogue is really solid, and the way that they go about it is I don't know if I really want to. It's not even as much a spoiler, but they both primarily happen in the third act. But Adele and Leah Seydoux' character have emotional dialogue exchanges that feels much more real than perhaps a cliche a Hollywood film or a cliche. Uh, um, what's what I'm looking for? When you're watching a play, they're projecting a lot because you got to get to the guy in the back. But I think when you have the benefit of a film, you're allotted more subtlety and you're allotted more quieter moments that you can't get from a play, and vice versa. There's many. The way that you act on a play is very spontaneous. It has to be, if you have to be in that rhythm of the moment, or else it's not going to work, and the audience is going to see right through it. So there's many advantages to doing this sort of dialogue in a film and in a play. But here, I think the way that Ira Sachs directs it, which I think in part of Franz Rogowski's performance, I imagine would be from Ira's direction, which is Ira Sachs, a filmmaker who I have unconsciously always been aware of, but I have not seen any of his films. I remember when Love is Strange from 2014 came out. I remember when Little Men from 2016 came out. And actually, funny enough, I very nearly almost watched Little Men about a month or two ago, not even knowing that it was him. I think I remember his film Frankie coming out in 2019, but he is 40 Shades of Blue from 2005 I've always been aware of, so I have not seen any of his films. This is the first of his work that I've seen, and it's got me very interested. It looks like he deals with primarily a lot of romantic, kind of troubled relationships, at least just speculating from a little that I know of each. But Passages, I think, is a highlight of the year, undoubtedly. Great performances all around, solid dialogue, and good pacing, too. When it was over, when you realize, you're sitting there in the cinema, or maybe you're watching at home, or whatever it is, and you subconsciously, you start to realize the film is wrapping up. I sat there in the cinema thinking to myself, like, wow, I have been sitting here for about an hour and 40 or so, but I've been so engaged. I'm sorry, like an hour and a half. It's a short film. And I've been so engaged with these characters and the lives of these characters, and the conclusion is fantastic. I think the final sequence in the film is a really kind of great place to end it. Maybe not so much end this story, but end the film. So when the credits come up, you actually you feel like, all right, these characters have actually gone through something, and what will the outcome be afterwards? Who knows? But Passages. Keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the work of all three. Actually, I should say all four of these terrific actors: Franz Rogowski, Ben Whishaw. I think I've been calling him Winshaw this episode. I do apologize. Ben Whishaw, Adele Exarchopoulos, and Erwin Capua Fali. I do apologize. Names aren't my strong suit. Terrific stuff. Terrific stuff right there. Sip of this coffee. It's just so delicious, man. I tell you. Coffee in the afternoon, tea at night. That's the way it goes. A nice Irish or Scottish tea at night. I don't even know what kind of coffee this is I'm drinking. I think it's from Costco. Don't know. Another terrific film that I watched recently. Another brand new film. Look at that. Well, perhaps brand new. I think this was actually from a couple years ago, but didn't get a physical release until within the last year, I believe. I picked this up, blind buy, Blu-ray from TerrorVision, and I imagine this is probably still in print. I know TerrorVision have their own. They are no longer part of the OCN distro on VinegarSyndrome.com. They have their own website where they've been releasing many titles and have many titles in the work, primarily genre fare, but with some exceptional films, others that I'm not familiar with, others not so good, but it's a grab bag of titles, and I imagine that you could probably get this on their website. But I wanted to mention a documentary that I watched recently, and you guys know how much I love documentaries, and the unofficial tagline, I would say, when coming to discuss documentaries, is that a good documentary can be better than a great film. We've discussed many great documentaries on the show. The Bridge, Life of Crime, the Toynbee Tiles. I forgot the name of that one. I do apologize, but you can go back. Anyways, from 2017, directed by Brad Abrahams, starring David Huggins, Love and Saucers. And this is such a fascinating and compelling film. And if you're sitting here like, man, I only have so much time to watch these films. I lead a very busy life. I have no time for nonsense. Well, brother, you're in luck. This runs at a brisk, fast 65 minutes, and the Blu-ray is loaded with bonus features. So perhaps you watch the film and maybe you have a little bit of time left over and you want to check out those features, including an interview with known artist Robert Crumb. Was a very famous comic book artist, star of the Terry Zwigoff documentary Crumb, which, if you are not aware of, should be on your radar. A very good documentary, very interesting, unique artist of him. I watched a little bit of that interview. It's him commenting sort of on his perspective on David Huggins and his artistry. But I should probably tell you what it's about. David Huggins, who is living in New Jersey. He's 70 years old, and he's a brilliant, at least I feel, he's a brilliant painter. His work is so unique, so transgressive, frightening at times, just so unique. But he insists that when he was 17, he lost his virginity to an alien woman, and his paintings, he talks about how he went aboard the ship and how he met these aliens, and his paintings are the stories of these times where he met these aliens and he had these surreal dreams about having an alien child. And the documentary rightfully takes a non-judgmental point of view at this. David Huggins is a guy who is very fascinating. He has all these. If you're a film fan, he's got a wall of VHS tapes. Talks about some of his favorite science fiction and horror films like Son of Frankenstein and The Thing from Another World. And he talks about his experiences. And the thing that I get out of this is that whether or not you actually, I guess this is also a timely documentary with all the UFO rage that's been in the news, which is very cool stuff. I try to keep out of all the news nonsense, but that UFO stuff I find so fascinating. So this is a timely documentary for that. What I get out of it is that whether or not you believe him, or whether or not you believe in aliens, or whatever you choose to believe or not to believe, what it comes down to is that David sincerely believes all of this to be true, and that is really the only opinion that I think matters. His paintings are so surreal and unique, and every time they're on screen, you just can't get your eyes off the screen. There's a part in this film where they talk about a book that he published of all of his, of many of his paintings, and you know, I got to get on that. And there's this great times where he's talking about, one of my favorite parts of the documentary is when he's showing off his paintings. I'm sorry. At an exhibit in New York, and they're very sexual paintings. There's one where he's like sucking on the breast of like an alien woman, and I've tried to keep this PG-13, and he's explaining the story, and you feel for him. It's never, when he's talking about his sadness at leaving some of them behind, and how he felt bad about, he thought he killed this alien baby. You feel a real kind of sympathy for him. He's a guy who has turned these experiences that he's claimed that he's had into these wonderful paintings, and he's turned his life experiences and made them into these just completely unique pieces of art. I would recommend that, even if you don't get an opportunity to watch the documentary, or perhaps you don't think you'll be able to get to it anytime soon. That's okay. We all have our lives. We all have our different situations that we get into where we're not always able to get to what we need to get to. I would recommend at least going on the internet, and I guarantee you can find many of his paintings on there. It's just so fascinating, so eye-catching. If you put that in your house, you're definitely going to get some people who are going to, do a double check of what am I looking at? But it's just so cool, man. I think this might be streaming somewhere as well. I think this might be on Tubi, to my knowledge, because oftentimes I struggle to compel myself to buy contemporary films, and especially blind buy contemporary films. I've been burned on so many ones, and there's just so many that I just have no need to own. But I was happy that I did buy this one. I don't know if I heard about this because of Brian Sauer's recommendation, or I bought it around the same time as that. But I can't remember if I bought it based off that, or if I bought it and then he talked about it, because he's talked about this film a number of times, and he's just made some really compelling points in regards to the film. But this film should definitely be on your radar if you're interested in outsider kind of art, outsider kind of artists. transgressive art, paintings. If you're a fan of any kind of historical paintings or any science fiction, then you should definitely be on this, man. It's like, you go to a museum and you just are surrounded. It's almost like a time machine in a way. You go to a museum and you're surrounded by all this beautiful history around you, from different decades, different centuries. You look at these paintings and just the time and the painstaking effort that these artists decided to put into it, man. They could have done anything else. They could have sat down and put their feelings into writings, or they could have done it in music or anything like this, but they chose to do it in paintings, in a visual kind of medium, and it is truly one to really kind of engage yourself with and find yourself in the context of when was this made, why was this made, what is the context of what's happening on a shallow surface level of this photo, what meanings can I derive from this. It's important to kind of surround yourself with this good kind of artistry, man. Get the opportunity, go to a museum, surround yourself with art, surround yourself with history, enjoy being with the paintings, enjoy being with yourself, interpreting these arts as you will. Sorry, I just had to get a sip there of the coffee. But yeah, Love and Saucers, very good stuff. Definitely one of my favorite things that I've watched this year. I noticed that a lot of the titles don't get released until a couple years later. I bought another documentary a while ago from OCN. I think it was Beauty Day. It was about the public access guy who was doing all the crazy stunts and kind of the downfall of his public access career. I think that was like a 2017 film, I believe, or 2016, and I think that just got a Blu-ray like last year or a year or so ago. Or 2 years ago. I mean, a lot of these films, if you catch them at a festival, it's one thing, and then you gotta wait for a home release. There's been a couple of films that I've just still been waiting to get releases of. There's a couple of there's a German film right now that came out last year or 2 years ago that I'm still waiting on a release of. That's currently unavailable to watch anywhere, and I did not get an opportunity to go see it. It was a one-time showing, and I missed it, and I don't regret it because, I don't regret anything. It's sort of like, well, I could have. If I went to that, then I wouldn't have done this other thing. And your life changes. You spend your time like this or like that. It's all about how you want to spend it. You shouldn't be worrying about what you should have done instead or this or that, because brother, it already happened. You can't go back and undo anything. It happened. You just gotta, keep going forward and doing what it is you gotta do to make your life better, make your soul better, make the people around you better, and make the coffee better. Actually, that was very good coffee. Actually, we're closing out the episode, and I got a little bit of coffee left here, so. But those are my two recommendations for the episode. Two contemporary films. Passages and Love and Saucers. And like always, I had some other things I was going to talk about, but time is not on my side for this one, so I'll just have to leave that for another time, should I come back to it. But thank you. There we go. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Sorry, I got coffee in my throat. There we go. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Make sure you are doing what it is exactly you need to be doing, getting the job done, working on your passions, on your dreams, making it all come true, because no one is going to do it for you. This is your life. Do not waste it with people whom you don't want to associate with or in situations that you don't want to be a part of. Forget all that nonsense. You are the writer, director, one-man crew of your whole life, so only you can make it go in the direction that you choose to. Put in the time, the work, the efforts. It is all in your hands, man. All right. Thank you so much.